To this computer specifically, so I don't lose anything.
So you said that we have 50 subscribers on YouTube. I'm looking up, for those of you who don't know, Aaron is kind of the YouTube person for the podcast, and then I'm the one who uploads for any of the like other podcast apps and stuff. And so we have 50 subscribers on YouTube, and we have 23 on Podbean alone, and then some other ones. But here's the cool thing. We have people listening to our podcast. Ready for this? This is the fun part. From the US, obviously, Canada, that makes sense. Norway, cool. United Kingdom, yeah. Japan, Germany, Netherlands, Ireland, Switzerland, France, Ecuador, Australia, yeah, Belgium, Brazil, Russia, Sweden, Austria, Spain, Greece, India, Italy, and New Zealand.
Wow.
I have no clue who some of those people are,
from each.
But welcome. We're glad to have you.
Welcome. Yes, indeed.
And if anybody out there knows how to get us on Apple, they should let us know.
We're gonna have to call them. We're
actually gonna have to call them. Yeah.
Because apparently it's a thing that happens to some podcasts, and it has happened to us. We have completed. Aaron and I've spent hours, and then when I couldn't figure it out, I sat down with Aaron on a Zoom call, and we worked it out to make sure that we were ticking every box perfectly. Sent it in. Nothing happened.
Still hasn't. Yep.
Nothing has happened.
And keep in mind, like, I have a podcast that's on Apple as well.
Yeah.
Never a problem. Apple's like, I find, especially with their like software backend, is very much like it is easy and it will work in one click, but only if you do it exactly the way they want it to be done. Right. So they're like the explanation of like, hey, do this. Okay, cool. Whoa. Not like that though. Like they're 100% that. Yeah, we do not have enough geographical information, but minasan konnichiwa, all our Japanese people. Watashi no nihongo wa mezuii desu. Amy knows what that is now because she's my friend on Duolingo.
I can order sushi and green tea and water, and I can say that is a doctor, and I can say that is a student, that is a teacher, and that is a lawyer. That's what I can handle.
You didn't learn that as a conductor yet, though.
So, Mark, I think you have the most important piece of brass banding equipment right behind you.
My oversized printer.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, part of that is that when I went to grad school, my teacher was a big believer in oversizing all of your scores, just so that you could see it, just more of it. You just had a bigger field of vision, I guess. So I've always done that since that time. But I was spending a fortune going to like FedEx or whatever copy shop to like blow up my scores because nobody had a printer that size. And I finally just decided, like, I'm at just the time invested in driving over there and doing it myself. I would just rather do it in my basement. And so I have that. And I also have next to it one of those pull punch, so I can spiral bind my scores and all that. So I do that for.
So then the problem's storage because they're the wrong size for a filing cabinet.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's the other problem. And my wife hates my basement because there are scores everywhere. But
how do you store them? Like, I'm curious.
I have a it's sitting on this, like, it's like a 2-drawer big pull-out filing drawer, and I just have them flat inside the drawer, but I have them grouped in groups of 10 inside oversized manila envelopes, and then they're numbered. And so if I'm looking for a score, then I know which envelope to pull out and go through there. That's more than anyone wanted to know about how I keep my score.
Oh, no, it's not. Can you travel with them? Can you fit them in a bag to get to rehearsal? Do they fit in the overhead container in an airplane? No.
So all of the above are yes, but only recently did I get a proper bag that holds holds tabloid size scores. Before, I could only zip my bag up part way and then there would be these scores out. I was that guy, but now I've got a proper bag. So,
well, and people think about when you think about running a 501c3 performance ensemble, which most of our brass bands are, everybody thinks that, oh, the hard part's going to be getting E flat tenor horns. No. The hard part is, what do we do? Where do we put who has our library and who's in charge of copying it and like goodness. All of those sorts of things. We just, so Tampa Brass Works, which is like the overarching corporation for Tampa Brass Band, and the Tampa Youth Band, we just absorbed the Sunshine Brass Band, and their operations. So we're getting them going again. Florida's oldest brass band will be an entity again by December. With that, their board gave me everything they have. And keep in mind, this band's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
So I have a drive that has a computer drive, like a full on, like opened up some sort of Windows 95 something or other, took the drive out of that computer. So I have that. I have some cassette tapes. I have every CD they've ever published and like just boxes of them. The library apparently is in some guy's house. They have like a bunch of instruments that we just now have to like knock on people's door and go, hey, can we have our E flat cornet back? Like we just have to do that. And those are the fun things of the ensemble that nobody actually thinks about. It. The standing in front and waving the arms and making that happen is not.
Yeah, that's why I was asking, because I'm like, the logistics of all this stuff. I was going through this with the youth brass band because when I took over, the youth brass band had been just a summer 2-week course for Dublin Youth Brass Band. And so it was just a workshop situation. So music was always just kind of like, yeah, I'll grab something, we'll do it. And then all of a sudden we have a full winter through spring brass band. And all of these pieces are kind of scattered around in various places, because before it didn't really matter. And then now I'm trying to compile them, and I'm discovering having them on various drives and all over the place. Like, I'm a millennial who wants like a paper copy somewhere. So I'm going through and printing them out and putting them in a folder. It can stay online, but I want that backup because it's like there's just stuff everywhere, and I want to be able to be like, this is it.
See, I'm the other way. I have like grant proposals from like 1986 that I'm going to make a digital version of and then throw out.
Yeah.
Like I don't want them physical.
Right. Well, I think some things. Yeah.
Amy, I was just going to ask if I could dig a little deeper into the Dublin situation, because I think that would be really, really meaningful for a lot of our listeners, a lot of your listeners to know a little bit more about, because Dublin is one of the great examples of a larger organization that has multiple ensembles operating under its umbrella, including, a top flight brass band, a community-oriented brass band. I think they have a wind band as well, and
there's like a dance troupe.
Yeah, there's a big band
and the youth band, the big band. So there's lots of groups. I'm curious about, does that overarching umbrella organization have a home? Do they have a physical space that they can kind of call their own and store things and meet there and do things like that?
So I'm relatively new to the organization, but I've learned a lot, because I jumped in right onto the board because the directors automatically are on the board. So the organization is under one financial account, and our treasurer is amazing because he keeps track of all of these different ensembles and their budgets, and we run everything through him. So things like percussion, we have multiple sets of percussion, and we have to, because with a big band, two adult brass bands, a youth brass band, a wind ensemble. At the moment, we rehearse at different locations. And so several will rehearse at different locations. Some use high school percussion. Some use the percussion that's owned by Dublin community bands. We're at different locations. There is talk about possibly securing like a location and building like a rehearsal site, because with this amount of, I don't know how many people are involved in this organization, but it's massive. And And people who have passed on have left some donations, so that the organization is actually not that far away from buying some land and building a simple rehearsal facility, which would help us to consolidate our resources a lot better. Because right now, I think there are like 3 or 4 different rehearsal locations for 5 different ensembles, and then there's the cornet band that is the historic brass band
Right.
as well.
Right. Yeah.
So we have all of that stuff. And I don't think that there's a central location where everything is stored. And so having that space would be massively helpful.
That's one of the things that, the British and European traditions are really much further ahead than we are, just in terms of having a physical space, a band room or a hall or some place where they have all their rehearsals, they store all their equipment, they've got their library, they hold their meetings there, they have their, their whatever business documents and things. They have a mailing address that people can send them things. Not that anyone really does that anymore, but you still need, like when you get an insurance certificate or something like that, you still need to have a place of address. And that's been a struggle for a lot of our groups in NABBA, is to handle those kinds of, just the things, like you were saying, Aaron, the things that nobody really thinks about, but are really essential to running a successful, performing arts organization. I'm really I'm a huge admirer of what's going on with the San Francisco Brass Band. So they're a relatively new band for any of your listeners that don't know about them. There have been brass bands in the San Francisco Bay Area for quite some time, but they were not members of NABBA or participants in our contesting scheme. But there were players in the San Francisco Bay Area who really wanted to be more active in that, and formed the San Francisco Brass Band as with the intent of being closer allied with our organization and attending our events. But one of the things that's been really beneficial for them is there is a kind of a rehearsal studio that's been made out of a warehouse in an industrial park just outside of San Jose, where a gentleman who retired from one of the big tech companies, and was himself a musician in one of the area community groups, decided he was aware of groups struggling with all of these issues, and he wanted to provide a place where people could come together and make music. And so he got a space. I think he purchased it. I don't even think it's rented. I think he purchased a space in a warehouse building, had it completely retrofitted as basically a recording / sound stage space, bought a complete set of orchestral quality percussion equipment, everything, marimba, timpani, chimes, all the works. And then they have several ensembles that are all, and I don't know what the agreements are with the groups that get to work there, but San Francisco Brass Band, there's a community wind ensemble, there's a community orchestra, there's a community big band, there's a percussion ensemble, and everybody gets their night of the week. And then when they have gigs and they need to take the equipment out, they just have to communicate with the other groups and let them know that they need it. But they've got storage space, they've got meeting rooms, they've got practice rooms. You can have sectionals there. They even have a break room with a kitchen. It's a really phenomenal space. And I think so many more. Of course, it was all made possible by this benefactor who decided that this was something that he wanted to do for the benefit of the community. But I think there are people out there like that, or groups of people who would be interested in supporting their community artistic life in a very tangible way. So I think it's worth looking into and making some efforts there. Yeah, for sure.
There's an effort in Dublin, in the city of Dublin, to create like a performance space. The issue with that is that all of those spaces would be rental spaces.
Sure.
So then you'd have to sign out that space and pay for that. And so that's why I think a lot of brass bands are rehearsing in churches like Dublin Silver. And then we have to adapt, we have to change the space because it was a space meant for events and stuff. And so currently we hang we hang moving blankets from the walls because it's brick walls and like a wooden domed ceiling. And so it's very loud.
Yeah.
And so we hang moving blankets, and the church is very generous in letting us do that. But these logistics of meeting in a space that wasn't meant for a musical ensemble,
right,
and having to try to change the acoustics properly. We took that idea from when I was working at Rowan University. We used to take PVC like shells. We'd make like these like squares and then prop them up and push the curtains from the stage in certain ways. And that created the perfect perfect rehearsal acoustic, and we called it the Bat Cave because the curtains were black. And so when we were rehearsing at this church and it was like, this is too loud, we need a Bat Cave.
Yeah. You're gonna build your own someday, right?
Yeah, and we find finding that those couple of benefactors, because my wife is also on the board for a semi-professional wind band that we have here. That's like a per service group, and we chat about it all the time. And what we struggle with in the major metropolitan areas, I don't know if you notice this with Chicago necessarily, but like if somebody just happens to have money and they want to donate to a classical musical ensemble, they just go straight to the orchestra. So they only know that the Florida Orchestra exists. So it's about getting us out there beyond, and we always end up in churches because Salvation Army people are already in churches and they're in our bands. That tends to end up happening. But
yeah.
Did we get Mark on here to talk about logistics? I don't even remember.
Well, I'm an officer with the National Association, or the Continental Association, I should say, and these are issues that a lot of our member bands are facing, and I think it's worth noting that. I mean, I think it's tremendous what's happening in our genre, in our activity, the level of musicianship and the level of performance that all of our groups are able to put on stage, despite having to struggle with all of these challenges, and the challenges of distance and recruitment, and the fact that vast majority of our players are non-native to this art form. We don't grow up in brass bands. We migrate to it in adulthood for the most part, unless we were lucky enough to be part of a youth band, which thankfully there are more and more now as we go.
Yeah.
Yes, it's awesome. So thank you for your work, Amy.
I thought it was interesting. Aaron, you were saying that if someone wants to donate money to a musical ensemble, they go straight to the orchestra. And I was having an interesting discussion with someone the other day about how we think that music education should change. Some things that we see that we think we could do better. And one of the things I brought up was, from a young age, we are kind of conditioned that orchestra is the epitome of musical expression in our country. We have we see it as being higher culture, because an orchestra would have been playing in a court, or for aristocracy and stuff, and a wind band would have been playing in the field as a military band, or at least we eventually let horns inside with what was it, the harmony ensemble or whatever it was.
Harmony music, yeah.
So, but getting into some history there, but I said that I think that we need to do this we need to make this change in our music education and expose kids and music majors to all different kinds of music, because as a euphonium player, I could probably count on my fingers how many times I heard a piece in music history that my instrument played it. I just felt like I was totally absent from music history. And as we know, euphonium isn't totally absent from music history. It's just absent from the music history that we study, because we study piano music, we study choral music, and we study orchestral music and string quartets. That's kind of what we study.
This is an interesting issue or conversation to have, because most people, the band programs in the United States are just booming in a lot of places. So most people that play music, their experience with music starts with band.
Yeah.
So somewhere along the line, it's not being brought to the forefront, and orchestral music is eclipsing it somewhere down the line. So it's, it's not about, I don't think it's about what what the colleges are teaching. They're far behind, the curve is in terms of their curriculums and and how diverse their curriculums are. But bands are everywhere, and it's huge. And there's still this persona that that bands are the second class citizens in the ensemble world. You put band next to it, and it's just not the same.
Because in higher education, we train these music educators who still go out and teach band, but we'll say Mahler is like the epitome of what we are doing, right?
Right.
And then look their euphonium players in the face and go, except for you, and saxophone, sorry, and all that sort of. And like we say that like jazz is this purely American art form, but I mean the wind band was such a big deal, and the marching band and the way that we do it is a distinctly American thing, and those are musical art forms, and so yeah, I think it's a little bit of column A, column B, what Amy and what Tony was saying in terms of like I think it has to start at the higher education level, but you are correct that it is already behind. And it's, I can tell you as somebody who works in higher education that we'll sit there and talk about the differences between a Leonin and a Puritan in mass. But Vaughan Williams is weird because he wrote a tuba concerto. That crazy guy wrote a tuba concerto. And they'll look you dead in the face and be like, yeah, and Hindemith was really interesting. He wrote a piece for every single brass instrument, except he didn't. The euphonium is distinctly not on his sonata list. And they're looking like 4 euphonium players who are going to grow up and be band majors or band directors, and just nothing, and so it is. And then it's interesting too, because I do feel like a lot of times, like, especially with wind band people, that the brass band gets treated by wind band people the way that the wind band gets treated by orchestra people a lot of the time as well.
Yes. Yeah. If you put band next to the name, like I wonder how it would change if all the brass bands changed their name to the Chicago Brass Orchestra or the Upper Brass Orchestra.
Someone should try that and see what happens,
Yeah.
All right, get Jim Gourlay on the phone.
River City Brass Orchestra.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, it's interesting to have these we were talking about the logistical conversations, because that's kind of, isn't that a lot of your role, Mark, when it comes to the big event?
Yes, it is. And the next 6 weeks or so of my life are going to be contest minutiae, but we have a great team on the board, and we have a great team on the ground in Huntsville, in our host band, the Brass Band of Huntsville, and they're doing terrific work, have done for the last 2 years and continue to do so in preparing for this upcoming contest. It's really exciting. This is, Tony, is it official now? This is our biggest contest in history.
Yeah, by one band. It's 39 bands. It's the largest NABBA in history.
That's amazing. Second section has just exploded this year. There are 14 bands, largest section ever of any section at a NABBA contest. And I don't pity that judging panel having to compare 14 bands' performances on the test piece on Friday. I know it's something that European judges commonly deal with, large section sizes, large lists of bands, and being able to come out at the end with a comprehensive, ranking of those groups. But it's not something we've had to deal with on that scale before. So it's going to be a great opportunity and a great challenge for everybody.
Yeah, we've had some large sections in the 10, 11, 12 range, but this is a little bit
Yeah.
more. But I'm actually excited to see how it turns out, because with us revamping the adjudication process, it's going to give us a better indicator about, hey, how does the flow for this work with larger sections, and a significantly larger section rather than just 6 or 7 or 8 bands.
Yeah, more
Well,
bands, more data for sure.
Absolutely. And Aaron, you were talking earlier about how, marching band and wind band are, largely American oriented art forms, or that they have their genesis, at least here, in their modern iterations. And along with that, the competitive aspect leads to a huge body of research that's been done about into the nature of adjudicating musical performance and how you assess that in the moment and how you reflect that in the results that you return to the bands. And the numerical point values that you ascribe to different qualities of performance. We've done a tremendous amount of, more than any other country on the planet has done in that area. So if there's any any location that's best suited to advance the field of adjudication in brass banding, it's right where we are. This is in our wheelhouse. And we're fortunate to be able to call on such experienced adjudicators, while also respecting our tradition, our ancestry, if you will, by bringing over folks from Europe as well, so that we're really getting the best of both worlds, really, in the adjudicators that we're bringing.
I think it's also worth noting that the adjudicators that are coming over from Europe, have been wanting something that along the platform of what we've been working on. They're looking for something that can be a little bit more protective of their evaluation, something that gives them more credibility and more stability, and it just hasn't been developed in other places. It's been tried, but it just hasn't really taken on. Criterion based adjudication isn't a new thing. Even in the brass band world, people have tried it, but it just hasn't really made its way into the mainstream. And what we're trying to do is standardize it, not only for our championships, but through our regionals as well, so that we can come up with what a number actually means. And when you hear a performance, will that number actually match up to what that performance was? And then through that, the bands will all know what they have to achieve in order to get a certain score, so they can specifically work on those things. And this is one of the things that has driven marching bands and drum and bugle corps to the excellence that they have, is that they know what the standard is, and they know what they have to do in order to meet a certain minimum score. So in the long run, this will be, it'll take some time, but we're on the process to get there.
Well, especially when it comes to transparency is so important when you're judging stuff that is relative to our own tastes in so many ways, or subjective, I guess is the best way to put it, in terms of everything. So being able to look at a number and explain why that number is the way it is, or in like a band, because especially in a world, and transparency is so important, especially in a world where scrutiny is more widely available. It's not just a bunch of us complaining at the bar after the competition about what somebody said or anything like that. Now I can go into a forum in the world and express my opinions and all that sort of thing. So being able to and listen to feedback and see what the actual numbers do and do that research and all that sort of a thing. I mean, that's something that, like you said, Tony, that, drum corps and all that, and BOAs and all those sorts of types of organizations have been having to do now for 20 years or so minimum, much less.
Yeah, and it's interesting, because if you went to a big marching, like a Band of America regional, their preliminary round will have 30 bands in it, and it's all judged. We're talking about 14 bands, but those guys have the ability to accurately or very closely get 30 bands in the right order.
Yeah.
So it's tough. It's not easy to do, but because they've been doing it for years and years and years and have been perfecting the craft of evaluation and scoring evaluations, they've been able to get a lot of reliability out of it.
And let's be clear here. We're not trying to turn this into drum and bugle corps or marching band competition.
Absolutely not.
Brass
I could already hear those keyboard warriors. Well, we're just going to try and turn marching band into blast or whatever. Yeah.
And that absolutely isn't our goal. What we're just trying to do is take what's already been learned about the field of adjudication and apply it to what we're doing in our own activity. Because at the end of the day, I mean, the competition is great for so many reasons. It's motivating. It gets you to advance your own skills and your band's skills past what they've been able to achieve previously. It's tremendously motivating for people just to be in the same place for once in the year, or a couple times a year, to get together with other bands who do what we do, and just exhale for a moment and be like, okay, I don't have to explain for the 90,000th time what a British style brass band is, because these people all know, they all get it, what we do. But, all of that is super beneficial. But at the end of the day, the contest is really all about us improving our musicianship so that when we go back home and we're giving concerts in our home community and we're doing performances for schools and churches and, outdoor concerts in the summer and holiday concerts in December or whatever, that we are putting the skills that we learned as we went into contest in the service of presenting, music and enjoyment of music to the community as a whole. That's the point of all of this at the end of the day. That's what we really want to be about.
Yeah. And I don't know of any brass bands in North America where their sole function and purpose is to just go to the contest and win trophies. It's really all in the pursuit of improvement and to making sure that their community is served. And they, because nobody wants to just play one concert a year. They want to play lots of concerts, and the more people that are in the audience, the more exciting that performance is. But also, if you raise your level of quality, more people will be interested in coming to your concerts as well. So everyone's kind of on that run down the highway to get to that that high quality performance, so that they can grow their audiences and entertain them better.
Those are just I think there's a reason, because if you look at the amount of professional musicians who are doing the contest now, I think that number is just multiplying in a regular basis. And because you go, it's not a paid gig or whatever, but for me, it's very rare, and this is gonna hopefully none of my headhunters who normally call me for gigs is listening to this, but really, the gig, the week to week, gig to gig is like survival. Right. I play it as good as I possibly can with the amount of time that I have to make sure that I don't screw up on the gig. And it is what it is. And that's not to say it's a bad product, but it's very rare. And NABBA is essentially the only time that for that person, and then for also a lot of my band directors and stuff, as adults, we take a moment to try to perfect something in our craft, as opposed to just get it good so I can survive. I mean, literally perfect it as best as humanly possible. Mm-hmm. And if I didn't have that little check-in with my own artistry on a yearly basis, I think it would be a void in terms of that creation, for sure.
Yeah, being in a brass band definitely keeps my artistry up, because as you said, in a gig you get 1-2 rehearsals max. Sometimes I'm sight reading on stage, right. And it's just kind of
play the right note at the right time and in tune.
Yeah,
pretty much what you got.
And in the brass band, it's keeping you going and constantly focusing on all of these basics and playing together and everything. There are a number of professional players in Dublin too, and it's just kind of occasionally we have gigs and we're not there at rehearsal, but everyone kind of understands. But that's kind of what keeps me going.
Yeah,
keeps me accountable.
I can't count the number of times we've had somebody come and sit in with us for the first time, just to kind of check out the group because they've heard about us from somebody else or whatever in both in Milwaukee and in Chicago, where the player will come in and they'll sit down for a rehearsal. And at the end, I'll walk over to them and say, "Oh, what did you think?" And they're like, "Oh man, this is amazing. I never knew this existed. I can't believe the level of difficulty of the music you guys are playing. I've got to be, I got to come back here and do more of this." And just like I'm sure the experiences you all have had with professional players who are gigging and being paid to play in other ensembles around the area, they come back to us as often as they can, between gigs, because they know this is the place that's going to challenge them the most. They're not counting 75 bars of rest and playing a C and a G. They're really, really taxed with all of their musical faculties. So
Yeah, it really fits into the core of what the brass player persona is.
I guess you're right.
Well,
It really does.
To circle around too, because we were talking about like the level, for better or worse, the levels of pretentiousness that everybody has towards the brass band, and we're just kind of this redheaded stepchild. But I've always told, especially my students, when it comes to like, should I do the Tampa Youth Brass Band? And I go, yeah, because if you can pull off whatever a brass band is asking you to do on your instrument, you can pull off whatever needs to be done in any other ensemble.
Yep.
Right. The hardest part for most of my gigs when playing trombone or tuba in an orchestra is counting the 500 measures of rest to play my whole note. That's and that's the concentration difficulty when it comes to brass band, even like even when it comes to like hokey Salvation Army marches, it's still harder than anything I'm going to play on 4th of July in a wind band. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we introduced the brass band at Rowan, there were some of the other professors were voicing their concern that the students would be overtaxed. This was going to be too much for them, but the opposite happened. They were finding it enhanced their endurance. Their playing ability went up.
Counting, weird rhythms and stuff like that.
Yeah, their sight reading ability.
Mm-hmm.
Even the theory professors commented that their rhythm reading ability had gone up because they were, because if you're in the back, you're practicing things that you were repeatedly doing. So you're giving the tuba players, whole notes and half notes in band, and then you give them brass band stuff and they're all over the place. And then suddenly their solfege and rhythm sight reading ability starts to go up a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's much more challenging. I always wondered if like the wind ensemble directors at universities that have really good brass bands, if they appreciate what the brass band does for the students and improves the quality of their playing in their wind ensemble. Whereas instead they're like, well, this is going to compete with the players, so I'm not going to get the best players potentially. They don't look or want the competition. But I'll bet the wind ensemble director at James Madison University probably has an appreciation for what the JMU brass band does.
As an alumni, he does. Yeah. Stephen Bolstad, who is now retiring. So that will be a void. But he generally, and I mean, Kevin might have some more words for this than I do. But the general of what I noticed is that the wind band folks at James Madison, kind of liken it to the things that they can do academically for your brass players to what also the marching band can do for those people as well in terms of endurance and chops and all those sorts of things. I do, because I've also been to other universities, both taught at and attended, where the wind band staff do think the brass band is like stepping on their toes a little bit and encroaching on their things. So I think it's kind of a case by case basis in general. I wish we could shake the wind band people and go, I swear this is going to help. Like, I promise you it will. And also caveat for our listeners, I'm not trying to, by the way, I was trying not to say that, orchestra or wind band is lesser than because the euphonium part in Year the Dragon is harder than Pineapple Bowl. I'm not trying to say that, right? They all have their means. I'm just trying to say that the training that brass band gives you makes it so you can create art at a higher level in other ensembles. That's where I'm trying to go with that.
But it is. It's way harder than Pineapple Polo. It just is.
No, I had to play Pineapple Pool on a 3-valver, and I can tell you.
Oh God!
Oh, there we go.
Absolutely not.
That was awful.
Absolutely.
My fingers are like playing through it. I still remember that from high school. So I had to practice that stupid part. So
and isn't it just such an like we think about like the history of music in North America in general, right? And the pretenders that were all these composers until like Copeland descended and apparently became the master American composer, which I would argue against. But right, we were just like copying these Europeans and all that sort of a thing. And it's so funny that like here we are living that life again in our own medium of like, we're not gonna, if we keep just bringing Europeans over here, as though even though their insight is phenomenal, we're never going to train American judges. We're never going to train American composers. We're never going to train American musicians to understand what that art medium is, right? And so, of course, we need to borrow and we need to ask and we need to consult. But I think especially in the movements that I've noticed in the past few years, it seems like the competition is becoming such a hive mind for creation of sustainability in the brass band movement.
Yeah, well, it's also it takes time, and there are more North Americans that are quality trained brass band people than ever before because of their interest in it, the length of time they've actually spent in brass bands learning it and developing it. The research they've done and going overseas and studying it and going to universities over there and bringing their knowledge back. So, it's just been steadily getting this. In the 1980s, there were three guys, Perry Watson, Paul Drosty, and,
it was like 40 dudes in Ohio pulling it off. Yeah.
Right. It spreads in so many places that, it's kind of snowballing on a faster and faster up.
And again, I think there are so many signs of encouragement for us to take just in this year's competition alone. So I was receiving and packaging and shipping out all of the adjudicator scores from the various bands last couple of weeks. And it was just great fun for me to just have the opportunity to kind of leaf through all of those scores, pieces that I've listened to before, but maybe I haven't seen a score before. But so many new works that bands have chosen as a choice pieces that they've either commissioned from a composer, or pieces that have not yet been premiered. And by and large American composers, I think, in most cases. So that's really exciting. And the formation of new bands, the number of new bands that have sprung up across North America, in just the last few years, collegiate bands, so many bands are starting youth band programs, right? Or even, I don't know if this is the right word, but what I'm calling a secondary band, or mostly for adults, but of course you could combine that with young people and college age folks joining in, but like a secondary band that's maybe not as proficient as the highlight or the what's the word I'm trying to use? Headline ensemble.
Yeah, it's the AAA ball squad.
Right.
It's the bench.
But that's how we're gonna train new people, and more bands and more players means that we're gonna need more music, right? And music at different levels. And so hopefully all of this will spur a lot more energy and focus on getting composers to write specifically North American composers to write music for us.
It's funny. Literally everything you just said was the organization I'm running. It is. We were founded in 2019 as the Tampa Brass Band, and now if you fast forward to now, 5 years later, we absorbed a second organization to make sure we have what I'm calling it the retirement/training ground, right? The people who don't want to play contest level music, but also people who I play trombone, but I've never seen a treble clef before, like that guy,
Right.
Gal. But then also we established the youth band, and we want to actually establish a second one and make this one a British style one, because right now it's just kind of come as you are.
Mm-hmm.
But then also, like you were saying, one of the scores you leafed through was ours. It was a piece that we commissioned by an American composer because we have a composer in residence program. That was something we intended to do. And this is within 5 years is our organization, and we are not alone in that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
So it's really exciting. It's an exciting time to be in brass band. in North America right now.
Our mission statement has started to become that we want to create a band for all walks of life. So no matter what age you are, and no matter how good or bad you are, you will have a band. Because to be frank, honestly, I look at music education and what's heading in the public schools and stuff like that, and I want to make sure that you can still get an experience even if your school doesn't offer it.
Yeah. I remember my nephew, great kid. I mean, now he's like 26, but when he was in high school, he had to choose between band and pursuing his Eagle Scout stuff. And he decided to do Eagle Scout, and he had to leave band, but he felt bad because he said, I still have time. I just don't have time every day for band.
Mhm.
And at the time, I looked around to try to find something for a high schooler to play in for like 2 hours once a week type thing,
Mhm.
Something that he could keep playing. And there was nothing.
Yeah.
There was nothing. So, now I think that we have to, that when I was listening to you, Aaron, talk about that, we're making places for all walks of life, anyone who wants to play, and pulling in those kids and keeping them from quitting.
Mhm.
Well, it's an interesting thing, because there's a balance because there's not enough of those types of kids to fill up a band, so you're relying on kids who are in band programs to supplement their band programs by playing in an extracurricular. If you allowed those extracurriculars to be a safe haven for people who drop their band program for other activities, then the band directors won't support it and send the students that are still in their band programs. So there's a tightrope that you have to walk. It's nonsensical, because really the goal should be to keep kids playing, even if they're not in your band. At least keep them playing, because it serves the greater good. But that's not what the mentality really is.
But I think that situation is rare.
Well, then you also look at like other countries that there are a lot of countries that flat out don't have any sort of elective period, not just music, but any elective period inside of their program.
You take the standard curriculum every day.
Yeah. And then, so you learn euphonium by taking euphonium lessons and joining your local brass band a lot of the times in a lot of these villages. And then but then also what I think American bands are doing really well is having that, like, I'm out of college. I no longer have, like, there's not a credit hour ensemble that I can sign up for. Where do I go? And we're so good with the community group. When I was in Japan, I was talking to some of the artists there, and they were like, yeah, we have these phenomenal high school bands, and then they just drop it when they go off, and we don't have, we people want to continue playing and having a spot for them. And, but also not necessarily because of course, not everything can be a championship level thing, because you're going to intimidate people who are like, I just kind of want to play on Tuesday nights. I'm a dentist, and we need spots for them too.
Yeah.
And I think these multiple band organizations, it's actually, as soon as we absorbed the third band, Amy, I ran to Pat because I knew he was VP for that Dublin organization at one point or something along those lines. And I was like, hey, do you have like your structure, and can you send that to me? And you guys were who we were looking at as that multi-organization look, because one of the things you don't want to do with these organizations is try to build the ship while you're flying it, kind of a thing.
Yeah, when we built the Atlantic Youth Brass Band, I think we made a financial mistake. We connected it to the community music program in the college, and then that meant that year after year, that organization doesn't keep the money to turn over to the following year, so it gets turned back into the organization. And it also makes it that the Atlantic Youth Brass Band will probably never compete at NABBA, because there's no structure to get them out there because of those limitations. So so I kind of learned from the process of forming that ensemble. And I mean, the Dublin Youth Brass Band had been formed, but it was a very small organization with a very small budget and not a whole lot of resources. And so now we're going through and building it up. But I think that you're right. The Dublin organization has it figured out. It makes it really easy to start new,
especially on a board, like a board structure. That's the primary thing, is like who's running what. how many secretaries do we need? Like,
So there's the exec board, and so that's all of the conductors and elected members from various bands. So I think they each have somebody from each band on the board.
but you got to be careful who you call a board when it comes to the IRS, because when it comes to like nonprofit arts organizations, we always, that's like those sorts of things. That's what my wife, who has a master's in arts administration, she goes, yeah, you might not want to call yourself president because technically, and all those sorts of things.
Mhm.
So Mark, I wanted to ask this really quick because
sure.
I am so conflict avoidant. That is like, I will, if somebody else is in the aisle at the grocery store, I will go to a different aisle first before coming back there because I don't want to deal with that human. I don't, and it's not that I think they're nasty or anything. I just don't want to impact their day. So you are a point of contact for a lot of these ensembles coming into NABBA in terms of the logistics of that. What is a thing every band can do to make your hairline stay more like yours and less like mine?
Be patient. Just be patient.
Yeah, just for everybody to be understanding of the fact that we are an all volunteer organization. We do not have any paid staff at the national level. We have a fantastic board made up of representatives from all around bands in the U.S. and Canada, and every time we get together and work for the betterment of the organization, we all remind each other to set aside our whatever agendas we might have that would be beneficial for our individual bands, and think globally, more broadly, what's going to be best for everyone in the organization, and make decisions with that in mind. And I think to a large extent we've been able to do that. But it is a volunteer board, and same with Brass Band of Huntsville. I mean, they don't get any revenue out of this, and their members and families, spouses, kids are all pitching in to help make this a successful enterprise. And if it seems like sometimes things take longer than you would like for them to, or you're not hearing from us as quickly as you want to, just know that we are committed to presenting the best possible experience for everybody, and we'll do whatever we can to help everybody be successful and get everything that they need. It's definitely not our intent to penalize or put anybody behind the eight ball, or to make things difficult for anybody. So all of the processes that we have, and the steps that we ask bands and individuals to go through to get to NABBA and to put on a successful performance there, we're doing because it's what we believe will best help us reach our long-term goals. But I think that's the only thing. And by and large, everybody is really, really patient and understanding. And then the comments we get afterwards, bear that out. We have heard after the last two contests specifically, people have had just phenomenal experiences, great connection with other bands, and so many wonderful performances to enjoy. And I think that's the thing that I love about the North American banding scene. I say it a lot, but I never get tired of saying it. Our little corner of the brass banding world is unique in that we are by and large an organization that's almost family-like. Our individuals, our members, our players all support one another, despite the fact that we're competing against one another. There's no animosity there. There's no rivalries or anything like that. Or if there are, they're super friendly. I just think everyone's so aware of how much it takes to perform at the level that our groups do, that you can't be anything but appreciative and supportive and have admiration for what it took, because what you went through to get there, and that other band on stage has done the same thing. And I think at the end of the day, it's rejuvenating, it's refilling all of our buckets so that we can go back home and and continue to do this work that we do. And that's what I look forward to the most every year, is being able to be part of that. So.
Yeah, man, it's such a pain in the butt because it's like in the spring, everybody's so jazzed. Like we get done in April, and everybody's so jazzed to brass band, and everybody, I get messages, all my people like they're practicing and all that stuff, and then we take our summer break, and then they come back in August and like life hits again, and they're off of that high a little bit.
Yeah, it's normal, and everybody deserves a little bit of a denouement, after the build up to NABBA.
No,
but you're right.
Practice.
If anything, I've often thought that the 2 weeks after NABBA would be the perfect time to do a recording session, because everybody's playing at their peak, but also everybody's so burned out. So I'm not sure that would actually work. But I've just, so many of our bands, they work so hard and they get such phenomenal results, musical results out of that. You want to capture that, right? You want to capture those performances and turn them into something that can be archived and preserved. Of course, the live performances at NABBA, those are available for people to see and enjoy. Anyway, it's something to ponder, I guess. Yeah.
As much as I love this,
said.
as much as I love this conversation, I have to make a PowerPoint presentation on Caribbean traditional music. So
good for you.
We got to wrap up.
Yeah.
All right.
I just got to teach them something that's other than reggae. They just got to know that there's more to the Caribbean.
There's more to it, right?
It's more than Bob Marley. I promise you all.
Have you seen the movie? Is it out yet?
No,
it's out, right?
Is it out?
I think it's out.
I believe it's out now. Yeah.
I think it's out. Yeah.
What's the title of it?
One Love. Yeah, I think
it is out.
Yeah. All right.
And we'd like to thank.
If only I had time to go see it.
Who published this thing? Yeah, it's NABBA season. What are you doing? Watching movies?
Right.
Practice.
Exactly.
Sports study.
Well, guys, thanks for the conversation. I enjoyed.
Thanks for coming on and having it.
Yeah.
Good to have you, Mark.
Happy to be here. Look forward to seeing everybody at NABBA real soon.
You say that now.